and we'll kick it off. Um, yeah, so as I was saying, yesterday was May Day, and May Day, also known as International Workers' Day, is a day of celebration for a lot of folks. There's a lot of programming here in here in LA, and actually, Hamid, if you're open to it, I'd like to welcome and invite you to talk a little bit about the history of May Day, how it's looked here in LA, and we can talk a little bit about our direct action yesterday at the Los Angeles Police Foundation. Um,
Sure. So, a quick, brief history of May Day, and what it is, and why is it like so critical to our work. So it's International Worker Solidarity Day, and what happened was that now most of the people take it for granted, about 8-hour workday. So there was a strike that had happened in 1886 in Chicago, and the Haymarket manufacturing plant. So this is called as Haymarket strike. And so that was a major standoff between the Chicago Police Department, and there was, anarchist, communist workers, everybody was striking around labor law, workplace violence and everything else, and just wanting to get this legislation passed for 8-hour workday. And there was a whole lot of violence that came down. There was people who had infiltrated, a couple bombs went off, some people died, and then people were executed as a result of that too. But one thing happened was that immediately in the aftermath of the Haymarket strike by 1888, the Chicago Police Department established the first ever covert section to surveil and spy and infiltrate that became known as Red Squads. So, people talk about the FBI and counterintelligence and COINTELPRO programs. People talk about the NSC. People talk about post 9/11 surveillance. But the Red Squads, and on a very local level for local police departments, predate a whole lot of that. So, so that's what the history is. And then those Red Squads were then went to different places in the United States. In LA, they started the Red Squads in LAPD back in the early 1915 or something like that. And what was interesting about that was that these Red Squads were based not at the police headquarters, they were based out of the Chamber of Commerce. And about 85% of their budgeting would come from the Manufacturers and Retailers Association. So, and then their history is pretty morbid, where they would just go ahead and, infiltrate spaces, create chaos. And that's where, the breaking kneecaps and all of that, especially at port workers, and because Los Angeles Port, and this is also, just the development of IWW and Wobblies and various other groups, pretty militant organizing that was going on. And we still see that, at least the port with IWW is still pretty militant organizing, where they have turned away ships coming from Israel to even unload at the Oakland Harbor and various other places. So that's what it led to, and what had happened was that that as this thing was going on in Los Angeles, it took out another shape of Public Disorder Intelligence Division. And then what that did was that it came to light in the late 1970s, and there's a person whose name is Michael Zinzin, who really led the fight, the Coalition Against Police Abuse. That we found was back then that over 200 nonprofits had been infiltrated by the LAPD. Every city council member's office had been infiltrated by the LAPD. The mayor at that time, Tom Bradley, who was the first Black mayor of Los Angeles, his office was infiltrated as well. And what they would do is that during the Gallo wine strike and the grape boycott with Cesar Chavez and United Farm Workers, all the strategies that were being discussed would be then shipped over by the LAPD to the oh gosh, I forgot their name right now. The Golden, what was that name again? Something. They're like John Birchers, like the Klan in suits out of the Bay Area. So that's been. I'm sorry, what was that?
Was it the Western Goals?
Western Gold Society. I said something about gold, and yeah, Western Gold Society. So that's just the quick and dirty. This is this International Workers' Day, and just in Los Angeles, what has happened here? There's more recently that had caused its own tensions as well, sometimes in the community, that it became a major march for immigrant rights. As immigrants and workers that were being abused, but there was always this thing about, like, that the violence against Black workers and all of that, while it became more like a very nominal, just how this was addressed, but it became more like an immigrant rights thing to celebrate that. So that's what we did, and I'll pass it back to what had happened in the past, but I'll pass it back to Matthias.
Thanks, Hamid. Worth noting that the only reason I know about Western Goals is because Hamid told me about it. So. But uh yeah. Oh, and thank you, Shakir, for dropping your intro in the chat there. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you didn't get a chance to do that. But yeah, um, so similarly, with all this in mind, we kind of decided to have a small but targeted direct action at the Los Angeles Police Foundation, with this understanding that infiltration has historically been housed within these private interests, right? And and also that these private interests, historically the bosses, right, are now funding and facilitating policing, the expansion of policing, uh, sophistications in surveillance technology for the LAPD through these donations, right? And so um, it seemed like a natural target for us. We also invited the Defend Wilani coalition here in LA, to make those ties to Cop City in Atlanta, also founded by that city's police foundation, right? And we also wanted to honor and uplift the fact that May is, uh, National Solidarity Month for the forest defenders there. And so that was an aspect of yesterday's action that we folded into it. And yeah, the big way the Los Angeles Police Foundation operates here in Los Angeles is, they're a group of just wealthy majority white donors, right? And so they do donate these pieces of surveillance technologies that start off as donations, but become, line items. And one, that's a way for the LAPD to get their toys, but it's also a way for the LAPD to get a foothold in expanding their budget, right? Because again, it's something that starts as a donation, but is something they grow and expand. One example we often cite is body worn video, right? Body worn video was something that was donated by the police foundation, and we know that the city spent at least this is on the low end, $67 million on body worn video and related software from that initial donation. And we were also raising alarms about the fact that, this week, city council was set to vote on this Friday, actually, and it has been agendized, set to vote on the donation of a Boston Dynamics, what's technically called a quadruped unarmed ground vehicle. Some people call it a robot dog. It's military surveillance equipment is what it is. The French military uses it. The U.S. military uses it. It has cameras, microphones, sensors, 3D mapping capabilities, AI, and what's ambiguously being referred to as a payload capacity, right? And so we know in recent months, San Francisco PD has tried to add lethal munitions to their SWAT robot. We know Dallas PD has used their SWAT robot to blow someone up before. And so we anticipate, you give it to the most lethal police force in the country, we know where it's headed, and they're trying to give it to the SWAT team here in LA. And LAPD has such a prominent and explicit history of racial violence, right? That people can attest to through lived experience. But even if you look at the data of how LAPD SWAT team deploys its robotics, specifically its drones, a third of all deployments within Los Angeles are within 77th Division, which is South Central LA, Black and brown communities. So we're fighting back. LAPD is also pushing real hard to try to get this robot. They actually got the vice president of Boston Dynamics to come out and tell a slew of lies about this robot dog, right? And one of them being that, this robot can never be weaponized. You've got a multi-billion-dollar corporation that actively markets to the military saying their product will never be weaponized, and they anticipate or they expect us to take them at their word. Um, we're not doing that. And LAPD is also leveraging their cronies within city council to try to get this through. And so one big thing we've been talking about is, there's a committee within city council called the Public Safety Committee that generally oversees matters around policing before they visit city council on a whole. And this is a 5-person committee. And this committee is appointed by Paul Krikorian, who's the council president. And right now, the current makeup has 4 council members who received over $1 million in police lobbying donations. And so sure enough, they've been passing everything through for the LAPD. I think what some folks didn't expect, or, you should have expected, but caught me a little off guard, was how hard they were riding for this robot dog when it was at council, really making the case for the city to pick it up, just earning their breakfast, so to speak. And so, we've been organizing against that. We've been everywhere. We've been door knocking in Koreatown. We've been hitting up the Crenshaw Mall, Lamert. We've been at LA Trade Tech, flyering, sharing information about this robot, letting people know. And just real quick, so I mean, y'all are probably a little more plugged in with the coalition's work and maybe have seen us talk about it, but could you just use the raise hand function or even just drop it in the chat? Have you heard about this robot dog being in LA, or even like heard about it, period? Yeah, so we've got about 4 people there. Yeah, heard about it in New York City for sure. And so that was, I remember the first week we went out, about half of the people hadn't heard about it, really. Half had, and the half that had heard about it on, like, saw it on a TV commercial or something like that, because it has been pretty prominent on TV. But as the weeks go by, especially after Eric Adams rolled it out in New York City, more folks are seeing it, right? And more folks are seeing it in a more normalized setting. So we've seen it in pistachio commercials, in a Sam Adams commercial, in oh geez, well, the LA Times did a little bit where they compared it to a shelter dog. And so there's this clear campaign to try to normalize this dog. But I say that to say, city council and the city of LA aren't really making a lot of noise about the fact that this is going to be on the agenda on Friday. And that's by design, right? They're trying to sneak it through. And so we're really calling on folks to hit up the city council members. Yeah, and so John, it is on the agenda this Friday, but there's a request for a continuation to the 23rd, right, Hamid? Yeah, so they may not even vote on it this Friday. I think it's likely going to be voted on the 23rd, but they'll likely discuss it. And so we're asking folks to just share this information, and I'll drop this flyer in the chat. We have 3 council members we've kind of been targeting. And yeah, you should contact these council members, shoot them a quick little email, say, we don't want this. If you're in LA, you should definitely do this. Throw in your council member if you know who it is. If you're not in LA, you should still do this, because LAPD pioneers all these, policing sophistications, and other cities have it, right? But if the LAPD, which is kind of the gold standard in policing, gets it, trust, your town will get it next, And so, yeah, this thing's $280,000. It's not cheap. It's a surefire way for the LAPD to expand their budget. And maybe I'll just stop right there for a second to see if folks, have any questions. Also, Hamid, jump in there, please.
Yeah, actually, I just that's why I went off. I just got a call from Steve, and he was suggesting that we should definitely still speak out on the robot dog during public comment, or just on this Friday as well, because it's based upon a vote. If the motion to extend that passes or not, typically it does, but we don't want not to be present. And if people can't be there physically present, then at least just make that phone call and have other folks call too. And so yeah, so it's just a public comment on the at the city council meeting. So we can post the phone number there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll have instructions on how to call in. We'll post that too.
Is there a time for the action on Friday?
I believe we're saying 9:30, right? 9:30. Okay, and then we got Kay here, been paying attention since it was creative hearing. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so my point of reference was the Black Mirror episode. And I come to find out that Black Mirror episode was based on a Boston Dynamics robot dog. So yeah, it very much is coming to life. But there's still time to fight back against it. Do folks have any other questions about this robot? Yes, please. My hand raised over here.
Not about the robot, but who are, you saved me the time of going and doing the research myself. Who are the members of the Public Safety Committee in LA?
Yeah, so it's Councilmember McCosker, Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Tracy Park, and Councilmember Monica Rodriguez, and those four are in the take from LAPPL. They're the ones that got the over $1 million in LAPPL donations, the police lobby. And the fifth member is Councilmember Hugo Soto Martinez.
Would you repeat the names again? You said.
Yeah, so it's in McCosker. It's MC and then C again, I think. OSKER. Oh, thanks, Shakir.
I can type them in the chat if that helps.
Terrific, thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Shakir.
But this is now in full council, just as a reminder. So it already passed the Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification on it. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Gia. Yeah, that's a great resource. Thanks for plugging in. Appreciate you. All right. Cool. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Fears, worries, anticipations, questions about any other aspects of our work to refine too?
My camera keeps on going on.
It's got a mind of its own.
Oh, don't mind. With the mayor's budget just being proposed and the police budget being proposed, are there any specific items? Sorry, I just had surgery and I'm losing my voice. It hasn't come back yet. But are there any specific items of the police budget that we're targeting that we'd like to have removed, not funded?
Yeah, I haven't.
Is there anything specific we could target with council members or?
Definitely the whole thing.
Okay.
But we want the stuff that's not even covered on that budget, right? We want all of it. But I personally haven't had a chance to take a closer look at the mayor's budget proposal just yet, especially on the policing aspect. I'd open that up to anyone else in the room who maybe has had a chance to look at it a little more closely. I know there are a couple of things we identified in the LAPD's proposal, but Hamid, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think more recently, the mayor, when Karen Bass put her proposal publicly, going to the Budget and Safety Committee and now to the council. So the original budget the LAPD had proposed was going to be all around both operational and liabilities like retirements and pensions, close to almost $3.4 billion. And then which is the largest budget ever in the history of LAPD. But then Mayor Bass added additional 67 or 83, I can't remember that exactly, the number, $1 million for additional hiring of 500 cops. So that was recently added as well, which then in the long run, just provides, which becomes additional liabilities for pensions and resource and benefits and all of that. The other piece is that the expansion of this community policing program, like especially community safety partnership, how that is being expanded, which has been roundly rejected and criticized on so many different levels, because and we've also released a video on that and various things. That it's a very classic counterinsurgency program. They're expanding this thing that started off in housing projects in Nickerson Garden and Jordan Downs and some of the other housing projects. Now it's expanding to parks where people are. So yeah, so they're adding a few more $1 million to that. Lastly, I would say is that the budget for the youth development office in the city remains extremely minuscule. It's not even $2 million. Then when you compare that to the LAPD, what they are doing is that they come back with this BS saying that we are investing in the GRID program, which is GRYD, Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program, which is a partnership between the LAPD, the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles, and the City of Los Angeles, in which they, I think this next fiscal year, they proposed $41 million or something like that. But the issue with that people have always said is, and especially youth and youth organizing that has been going on, that it is after the fact. So that is more about like, how do we get these gang members into, getting the tattoo removal and various other programs and mentoring, which needs to happen. But there is no direct investment in youth and much younger people as well, where the Youth Development Office has given hardly any money, like 1 gazillionth of 1% of what the cops get. So these are some of the completely messed up priorities that are there.
Yeah, I do briefly, thank you for that, Ahmed. And I do briefly want to talk about, some of the narratives that the city's kind of leveraging to justify this whole notion that we need more cops. And I think what's particularly interesting when people have been writing about it has been looking at crime data. And I want to preface this by saying that we don't necessarily legitimize crime data, right? We know that it's a construct used for whatever the LAPD wants to do with it, right? They manufacture crime when they want to justify their presence somewhere. They reduce it when they want to legitimize, their tactics in a lot of ways. But even by their own metrics, by their storytelling, crime is down right now, and they're at an all-time low for officers. So it's just been really kind of sad and pathetic to see them still try to vie for, um, more officers in light of these numbers. And so we're seeing narratives around. I don't know if y'all have seen the news. Well, someone said they hadn't seen the news all week, and I envy that. But yeah, there you go. But some of those local news reports are saying crime's up on Metro now. That's the little caveat. Like we need to look at crime on public transit. And there are all these stories going around. And these are all fictions meant to justify, taking more of our resources. So yeah, I wonder how much of that crime they're talking about is fair hopping, right? And so how much of that budget could be used to subsidize or like to even make free public transit in that way. So yeah. Any other questions from folks?
I just wanted to ask as well, because I know that in Long Beach, there's been like an increase of like DHS grants coming in as well. And I know like the Olympics are coming, and then also like I believe it's the World Cup too. And so I think just something to consider as well is like how there's additional funding that's coming in because of those two events for like policing, etc.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jamalet. I can't immediately point to any DHS or even federal funding. I'm sure it's on the way. In fact, that was a big selling point for Karen Bass when she was running. It's the fact that there are resources, there are federal resources we can get, and we know that federal money comes with more policing, right? Oftentimes, so in anticipation of the Olympics, we've already seen the Olympics as an event, the LAPD and the city points to when justifying an expansion of the LAPD's budget, right? And even in justifying, the expansion of their tactics and some of their surveillance technology, right? So we've even seen, I'm thinking specifically about, uh, the budget proposal suggesting that drones might be used for crowd control, right? And so even this introduction of a robot dog. So yeah, totally money, right? But also I think even tactically they're gonna increase their tools, their capabilities in order to control people um, ahead of those two events for sure. And even just thinking about what was it, the Super Bowl, when the Super Bowl was here, the federal presence we saw in downtown LA, right? We saw vendors targeted, sex workers targeted, um, and so much more. And so, yeah, it's definitely something in the works. Um, yeah, so in the chat here, Kate just shared a video of a paintball gun on one of these Boston Dynamics robots. And so, yeah, and this is something their vice president, they sent their vice president over to defend the product in front of city council. He said, yeah, any old person can attach a machine gun or duct tape a machine gun, as if that was supposed to dismiss the notion that we're community members are concerned this weapon will be or this robot will be weaponized in some way. But yeah, there you have it.
Yeah, that video was done by an art collective to demonstrate how it could be used as a weapon. And then there was also another video of a real live ammunition firearm mounted to one of these types of robots. And it's pretty terrifying. Just to think like, they could surveil people and, track them down and follow them and, to control crowds or just like harass anyone and then, surround them with police to like actually take them into custody. It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kay, for sure. And I do want to just uplift again. We're saying all this. We're not trying to freak people out. We're not. We're here to build power, not paranoia. And I also want to ground us in the fact that you know this level of surveillance, this level of encroachment, the psychological terror that comes with having a tool like this in communities is something Black, Brown, Indigenous communities in Los Angeles have always endured, right? So even when we think about being watched with a camera, right, facilitating that people go into your homes, that's no different from what LAPD's aerial fleet is doing a lot of the times, right? Flying close to people's homes. Having high def cameras, right? Watching folks, shining a light on folks, shining a light through folks' windows, keeping people up. And so this is just another way to do that. It's just another tool. And that's how we know they will do it, right? This has been policing's goal since its inception, it's to target specific peoples, push peoples out, incarcerate folks, exterminate folks. So yeah, as scary as the sophistication, this quadruped unmanned ground vehicle is, it's a very expensive version of the same old. Kate, thank you so much. We're definitely going to be sharing those videos on our socials. And so is the other, yeah, could you post a link to the other video where it's got live ammunition? I don't know if that one's on Instagram too.
Sorry, it was me. I wasn't sure you can pull out the videos from Instagram and all. So yes, I thought maybe going back to baseline links would be helpful. Thank you, Kay.
And if you just have the Instagram link, that's fine too.
I did actually, I just searched it on there and to see what would come up, and those were some of the first things. I just searched Boston Dynamics. So that's the only things I saw, but yeah, they weren't my videos. They were other ones that I just found. Like I said, there is plenty of, like, I think New York, folks in New York have been putting out like information about these things before and stuff. So I can dig around and see if I can find something while I'm to share with you, but that's just how I found it.
We'd appreciate that, Kay. Yeah, but this is great too. We'll definitely be sharing this. Okay, cool. So we'll have some clear calls to action as the week goes by. And yeah, that's really all I've got on the robot dogs. Trello, was there anything else you wanted to throw in or to kind of talk about?
Actually, not. Like I said, I didn't come prepared tonight. Yeah. I do have an announcement when we do an announcements, but that's it.
Okay. So yeah, just real quick, maybe I can talk a little bit about, yeah, unless if folks have any other questions throughout this, please raise your hand or just unmute and I'll know you're trying to say something and we could jump in. But I could talk a little bit about our other work that we have going on right now, especially upcoming kind of blossoming work that has intersections with this. And one thing we've been working on is we've had this great residency with this after school program called STEAM to the Future. They're an organization here in LA that works with 1st through 6th graders doing an organizing 101 kind of curriculum. And so they're gearing up for their final project, which is a direct action. And so there'll be more on that in the upcoming weeks. And we'd love it if folks came and supported their cause, which is healthier lunches in schools. They're incredibly cute. They're also ferocious youth. And so we invite folks to come out and see that. And another thing we've been working on is we have a social media surveillance work group that's been working on a great deal of pop ed that's coming out in about the next month. And there are clear intersections with that with youth surveillance, right? Especially as the LAPD now has has always had a youth surveillance program called PATH, providing alternatives to hinder extremism, but they've gotten some federal funding there and have rolled out, training teachers, school counselors, school therapists on how to assess youth for risk factors, and in doing that, surveil youth for these risk factors for extremism and report on them, right? And we know historically some of these risk factors have been, Somali youth being too into their cultures and just clear instances of racial profiling, right? And we also know that there's an app out now called LASAR, LASAR, which stands for Los Angeles Schools Anonymous Reporting, which anyone can download. You yourself can download this app right now and just report on youth within LAUSD schools. And so, some of the great high school interns that we've been working with have been talking a lot about that and have flagged some of the issues of potential vulnerabilities for community members with something like that existing. And this app is very much rooted in some of the earlier fights of the coalition, right? The suspicious activities report, which showed the same racial disparities that policing always has. Geez, we lost Chella. Please, she comes back real soon. And then, yeah, and so we know that social media surveillance is going to be a part of that, right? Monitoring people's social media profiles to assess these risk factors. And that's going to tie into aspects of gender and sexuality too, right? We've seen social media used to target sex workers, right? By corporations like OnlyFans that have relationships with Meta in order to get sex workers put onto terrorist lists to de-incentivize their content, right? For working with competitors. We've obviously seen social media used to target drag shows and trans community members all across the country. And so these are all facets of social media surveillance we want to explore. And so, yeah, once we roll out some of this initial work, we definitely want to take this to the community and, bring everybody in to dive a little deeper into how this is impacting our various communities, right? Because surveillance and infiltration are ever present, no matter what aspect your fight is. And that's going to be true of like people exhibiting political dissent in any way, right? So they will use social media surveillance for political repression. We've seen that since 2020, right? Since the LAPD has been more open about their usage of shadow teams, which are undercover and uniformed police officers meant to infiltrate protests, right? And so we've seen in documents that they've monitored students' social media posts, identified actions, and even we were able to figure out what student they were kind of targeting based on the public records that they had provided, right? And so this is very much a burgeoning tool that's in full use right now. And so we're working on finding out more about that. Any other aspects of our work we want to bring up? Hamid, Shakir, I want to open it up to you as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just share that we're planning right now to have a town hall the third Tuesday of the month, which would be in person in Skid Row, where we are releasing part 2 of our report on the surveillance and tracking of child protective services and the Department of Children and Family Services. We had released, and I'll post a link on part 1 back in September of 2020, which was about the mapping out the infrastructure of information sharing and surveillance in child protective services and DCFS. I mean, so in essence, our work is pretty intersectional. So we look at various aspects of how information sharing and information and data is weaponized to then criminalize families and particularly poor families, Black families, and to go after their children as well, little babies. So the violence the structural violence as a result of it and the inherent racism. So this part 2, it will be, we are getting ready to release that report, and we'll be doing this in-person meeting, which would be on March 16th at 6 p.m. in Skid Row, and we'll put down the address here. And this is in partnership with the Downtown Women's Action Coalition, where particularly women in Skid Row, and we did focus groups and interviews and research and talked to social workers and talked to folks at DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services. So it's a pretty, not a full on, it's this next stage of us exposing and mapping out the information sharing and data collection and the harm as a result of it. So join us and be on a lookout for, just when we announce that and all of that, but tentatively it is set up for 6 p.m. on May 16th.
Awesome. Yeah. Very much looking forward to that. Big shout out to the Downtown Women's Action Coalition, doing incredible work in Skid Row, and also have done an incredible deal of work with the Gender and Sexuality work here, the coalition. Anything else? Also want to open it up for announcements. All right, y'all. I think that's all we've got. Please, please, please tell folks about this robot dog. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Question, is this the general membership meeting?
This is usually the gender and sexuality work group meeting. And we did have some programming slated for today, but unfortunately, a couple people had to dip out. So, but this is the first Tuesday of the month is generally the gender and sexuality meeting. The second
Okay,
is the war on youth. Third is our general meeting, and that's usually in person. And the fourth is the data-driven policing, which has been in person as of late too. And then we don't have a fifth meeting if there's a fifth Tuesday of the month.
okay, all right. All right,
And I
terrific.
just posted a link for part 1 of our report from 2020 on the information sharing on DCFSO.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just not ready for in-person. That's
I know. All of us. So hopefully this meeting, we always used to have this meeting in person too, and all of these. So hopefully all of these meetings will be back in person soon.
I'm sorry,
Right? This is our next.
you're
What-
not ready or you are ready for in person?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, I'm not ready.
Oh, you're not ready. Oh, okay. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand for sure. Yeah. And yeah, so grateful to have these virtual meetings as well to maintain that accessibility.
What were we saying, Shakir?
Yeah, it's just like you don't have papers. That's what I'm asking. I'm working on papers. So,
Oh man.
so if you go, I go into meetings, I'm expecting it to be like, it would be similar to going into, behind when we had the the iron curtain. You have papers? Where are your papers? And so I'm not ready for in person yet.
I hear that. Yeah.
Um,
No one's asking for papers over Zoom. So
yeah, see, Zoom I can deal with
Yeah.
because I know who's vaccinated. But anyway, thank you.
no worries. And Shakir, I'm so sorry I interrupted you. Please. Go ahead.
No, all good. I was gonna say something about the in-person meetings.
Okay, cool. And so yeah, city council Friday morning if you're local, 9:30. Let's shut down this robot dog. And I'll drop our email in the chat if folks have any other questions about any other aspects of our work, or even if you have any ideas or questions about like, hey, the coalition talking about this, or I'd like to hear more about this. Send us an email, and we'd love to look into it. All right. So grateful for everyone coming through. Please.
Thank you all.
Right.
Thanks, Matthias. Appreciate it.